Hey friends, welcome back to another Agent of Deterioration. In the last video we talked about fire, so it makes sense that today we'd talk about the opposite of fire? The nemesis of fire? I never really thought about the relationship these two agents might have. Anyways, we're talking about water. Let's go. Just making sure I'm properly hydrated for this episode. There's a bunch of different ways that water can get into your collections. There could be something natural that occurs, like a hurricane or a tsunami, or you might just be located near a body of water that maybe floods every so often. All of these can pose threats if they get escalated to a certain point. Then there's other things like technological and mechanical issues that can arise, like sewer failure, sprinkler system malfunctioning, overflowing toilets, leaky roofs, you name it. And then there are things like accidents where your sprinkler system goes off during a fire. I guess I wouldn't really call that part an accident, but the fire is the accident and the water is the accident response, let's say. Water damage happens a lot more often than you think, and it's usually just from accidents or neglect. For example, temporarily storing things in a basement and then that basement floods and just ruins everything down there. A lot of cultural heritage objects are very sensitive to water. Also, a more degraded object will be much more susceptible to water damage in comparison to something that's in really good condition or is brand new. If we're looking at what can happen to different materials, bones can crack, the collagen inside of them can degrade, and then they can also be stained by the water. With books, well, we all know what happens to books if you've ever accidentally had a water bottle open up in your backpack. Those are sad days, my friend. My mom accidentally waterlogged The Prisoner of Azkaban, and I've never been able to properly watch the movie without thinking about those poor pages. I forgive you, Mom, I do, but some scars persist. With books, the pages will get all wavy, the ink runs, and if you have a leather-bound book, the binding will actually expand and then shrink when it's dried out, which would cause it to crack and deform. It's not a pretty sight. The same sort of thing happens with all leather artifacts and other natural materials that contain collagen. They can get really distorted and even turn into gelatin if it gets bad enough. If we're looking at ceramics, which are very big in archaeology, so take note, you guys, they can also get quite a bit of water damage. Ceramics, especially low-fired ceramics, can be very porous, and that means salts can enter the fabric of the pottery and really cause some drama. But also, we might even lose that lovely patina that we all want on our archaeological ceramics. The same similar things happen to porous stone, so again, salt can get in, and there can also be a lot of staining that happens. That's all usually, again, with more porous stones like sandstone, and not really dense stones like granite. Reactive metals, like ones that can corrode easily, will also react super poorly to water. You can get major rust and corrosion, and if there's already some of it going on there, it will definitely speed up the entire process. Paintings can delaminate, and water-soluble paints will dissolve. And then finally, wood can warp, it can swell, then it can shrink again, which will also loosen a lot of joints with historic furniture or even with canvases. And of course, with any objects that get wet, we have to think of mold growth. That's a real possibility and something nasty that you just don't want to deal with. So if all of this damage can be done by our little friend H2O, how can we prevent it? Making sure your building or storage area is as watertight as possible is a really good start. Always make sure the building is in good repair, is monitored for leaks, and also you want to make sure that your pipes are well insulated for the winter in case one of them freezes and bursts. A big rule of thumb is to just not store your artifacts in cardboard boxes, and not just for water damage because cardboard itself is highly acidic and it has its own problems. But plastic boxes and other types of cabinets that are water resistant will act as a barrier for any water that does make it into the building. So it's really important that you not just have the building protected, but you also want to make sure that you have varying levels of protection just in case things get through. Which brings me to my next point, which is keeping things off the ground. That is a huge one. You know how everyone during a flood yells, "Head for higher ground"? Well, they're right. Get your boxes and materials at least 6 inches off of the ground. Put them on a shelf or on a support of some kind. This is a huge preventive measure that can save a lot of stuff. You should also have an emergency kit to deal with water damage, like plastic sheeting, rubber gloves, sponges, blotting paper, the whole 9 yards. And then you should also have a plan in place just in case this actually happens. The biggest thing to do when approaching a collection that has been damaged by water is to contain the flow of water to stop the flooding. From there, you need to remove any standing water and start working on protecting those artifacts. You want to remove the objects from their wet environment to prevent mold growth. You also then want to separate all of your objects so they don't start sticking together like things made out of keratin or collagen or just pages of paper. You then want to make sure that there isn't anything being deposited onto the object from contaminated water either, because that can cause a lot of problems in the future. There are a lot of different methods and approaches to dealing with materials that have been damaged by water, and they should always be handled by professionals, so I'm not going to go into detail about them here. But drying your objects out safely is a key priority. You don't want to just go and turn on a blow dryer and blast away the water using heat. No, that's bad. Drying things too fast or too slow can cause tearing, splitting, and it could even warp your object. Of course, if it's a hurricane or a major flood or something else dangerous, human life always trumps safety of collection. So don't go risking your life to save the Mona Lisa. It's not worth it, fam. So there you have it, friends. Water. The agent of deterioration that we can't live without, but we need to make sure that we keep it away from our collections at all costs. If you liked that video, go ahead and smash that like button down below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on the rest of the agents of deterioration. Big thanks to all of my patrons over on Patreon. If you like the channel and you want to support it, go on over to Patreon and become a patron. The link is in my description down below. Here are all of my socials, and I'll see you all in 3 days with the next agent. Stay dirty, my friends.